In the previous section, we discussed sense group and intonation unit. In this section, we're going to discuss information focus and nucleus. How do they connect to each other? Let me show you. At the very beginning, we discussed the relationship between sense and sounds, that is, meaning and sounds. And then in this line, we say, on the side of sense, we talk about sense group. On the side of sounds, we talk about intonation unit. However, how do we figure out it's a unit? This is a very crucial question. And the answer is that we have to decide where the information focus is. And on the other hand, that is where the nucleus is. So we have information focus and nucleus. And these are the things to signal sense group and the intonation unit. Still the sentence here. But there are borders and there are borders. How do we know that this part, but there are borders, is a sense group? How do we know this part is a sense group? In English, there's one thing, the nucleus in the intonation unit. We figure out, well, that's a oneness, that's a sense group, because we have heard the nucleus in the intonation unit, borders and borders. So, information focus or nucleus will give us clues to find out a sense group and an intonation unit. Why do they matter? Information focus and nucleus. Why do they matter? Why are they important? Because different placement may mean different meaning. Let me show you how. Look at the sentence here. The general reading would be, John's leaving Paris next week. John's leaving Paris next week. Okay. A different version. John's leaving Paris next week. Next. John's leaving Paris next week. John is leaving Paris next week. John is leaving Paris next week. The same sentence of 5 readings, the different placement of the information focus or the nucleus, and then the meanings are totally different. In the first one, this is a general one. We say, well, John's leaving Paris next week. This is very general. But the second one, we say, John's leaving Paris next week. John's leaving Paris next week. That means it's Paris. It's not London or some other city. Version 3, John's leaving Paris next week. What does that mean? Well, it means, well, John's leaving Paris is not leaving for Paris. It's not going to Paris. John is leaving Paris next week. If your friends say, no, John will stay here until next month. And you could say, no, John is leaving Paris next week. I don't think John's leaving Paris next week. Yes, he is. He is leaving Paris next week. Finally, we say, John's leaving Paris next week. So it's John who's leaving Paris. It's not some other person. It's not Tom or it's not Jack. Different placement, different meaning. I must say that this is the part where Chinese students will feel most difficult, most difficult. And the Chinese students' problems would be to read the 5 versions in one. In every situation, they simply speak in the same way. So in all the 5 situations, and the Chinese students will just say, Jiang's leaving Paris next week. Jiang is leaving Paris next week. So if there is no information focus and the meaning itself is not clear, if there is no nucleus, or if we cannot hear the nucleus of the intonation unit, that means then there is no information focus. So the Chinese students' problems would be no differences are made in all the 5 situations. What is the real problem? The real problem is that the lack an awareness of how the nucleus is made. A lot of people ask me, yes, I know that's the information focus, for example, and then people may ask me, yes, I know that then Paris is the information focus, but I don't know how to make it, how to articulate it, how to pronounce it. I know that Jiang's leaving Paris next week. Still the same thing. Then how? Next, we're going to discuss how. Okay. Jiang's leaving Paris next week. Within one intonation unit. In one intonation unit, the information focus, which is represented as the nucleus, 信息焦点它是通过调和来体现出来的。And then the nucleus has quite a number of perception properties. Okay, now first we know that then it's the last stressed and the most prominent word. Now, Jiang's leaving Paris next week. Paris is the last stressed and the most prominent word. It's most stressed. In English, we have many stresses in a sentence. However, there is one word we can hear that the most force are used to pronounce that one, and that's the most stressed. For example, here, Jiang is stressed, Li is stressed, but we say that Jiang's leaving Paris next week. And then next, the nucleus is toned. When we say a tone, we often say the tone of the nucleus. For example, here, I've used a 4 tone. High 4. Now, Jiang's leaving Paris next week. Jiang's leaving Paris next week. It's toned. Let me give you an example. This is the sentence we've just read. We've made some pauses here. We know pauses should be made here. And this is shorter and this is longer. But then how to signal the pause? We're going to use the nucleus to signal the come-in of the boundary. Listen to me. Companies want to strengthen the relationship they have with other businesses or with customers. And gifts creates a feeling of obligation which ties them together for the rest of the year. So we can feel that relationship, lei, and custom, ka, and obligation, gei, yeah, we can feel that the 2 stressed syllables stand out, obviously stand out of the context. Now, what can we feel? We can feel that then the boundaries between the intonation units, then we can feel the pauses here. And also we can feel that the most prominent word in a unit, lei, ka, gei, ya. You have to make it heard, understood by the listeners. And this is the difficulty for the Chinese students. Sometimes they know that this part of the information is important, but the difficulty would be then how can I express it? Now we are doing it now. This is why we take this course, pronunciation. We make sense out of sounds. What does that mean? It means, well, we're going to use the nucleus, some perceptual features to signal the information focus. Analysis, further analysis of this. Still this sentence. First, according to what we learned in the previous section, we're going to make pauses first. So pauses first. The intonation units, the boundaries of the intonation units first. And then we've made the pauses here. Companies want to strengthen the relationship they have with other businesses and with customers, and gives to create a feeling of obligation, which ties them together for the rest of the year. And we can feel that the 4 parts, we have 4 parts, however, each part is a unit. So, first, pauses indicate boundaries of meaning units. This is the first step. And second step, we come to the nucleus. The nucleus signals the end of the unit. So you know, yes, I know that's a sense group, but then how do I make it? How can I produce the utterance in a way that we can feel that's the boundary of the sense group? Yes, we can do that by means of nucleus. Companies want to strengthen the relationship. You can hear a prominent word pronounced here. Companies want to strengthen the relationship. That means, well, a pause is coming. A pause is coming, or for the pause is approaching. Then companies want to strengthen the relationship they have with other businesses and with customers. When we hear these customers, we know that the speaker is going to pause. And at the same time, if you are the speaker, you know if you want to make this part as a unit, then you have to make a pause here. Continue. And gifts create a feeling of obligation. You hear this gay, I mean, okay, there will be a pause here. If you're the speaker, you make a pause for the listeners to chew, to digest, and to process, which ties them together for the rest of the year, for very long, and then a full stop here. Practice. Try to make divisions between sense groups first, and then try to find out where the information focus is. And then you're going to use the knowledge about the intonation unit and nucleus to express them. Let's read it. Humans have been using names since prehistorical times, but although all cultures use names, the ways that they have of naming their children differ from place to place. In some places, people have just a single name, while in others, the naming process is far more complex. Sometimes, our names carry information about our family roots, or even, in the case of some African cultures, the order in which each sibling is born. Listen again. Humans have been using names since prehistorical times, but although all cultures use names, the ways they have of naming their children differ from place to place. In some places, people have just a single name, while in others, the naming process is far more complex. Sometimes, our names carry information about our family roots, or even, in the case of some African cultures, the order in which each sibling is born. Now we can hear the prominence of the nucleus. And this is the purpose of the course, So I teach you all these theories about English pronunciation, but the purpose is still, then I want you to feel, to get a feel for the difference between Chinese and English. And at the same time, I want you to learn how to read it by yourself. Now, the provenance of the nucleus, remember that the nucleus are pronounced longer, louder, and toned. Toned. 这里的 toned 意思是说它有一个显著的有一个语调变化。Next question, you will ask how to decide the nucleus. The question equals to how to decide the information focus. It all depends on what kind of meaning you want to express. So it all depends on the context. So this follows that then the placement of nucleus or the placement of information focus is very flexible. Let me show you. When we decide nucleus, the placement of nucleus, we often have two kinds of focus, information focus at the same time. It can be a broad focus or a narrow focus. A broad focus usually it's the last lexical word. It's the last lexical word. For example, this one. The lexical word 就是实词. All cultures use names. All cultures use names. And the names is the information focus and is the nucleus. A different one. Look at this one. We have use names, and then we have use names. But then the information focus is different. When the information focus is different, the nucleus is different. So we have this one. Humans have been using names since prehistorical times, but although all cultures use names, this names is not focused. It's not important. It's not important because then it appears for the second time. We have names here. So when it appears for the second time, it does not carry new information. It becomes given information. And the words carrying given information is not stressed. So in this case, we're going to say, although all cultures use names, use the meaning, use is more important than names. Concerning the placement of nucleus, I think the most important thing is this. Remember that the nucleus always carries the primary sentence stress. So the most important one in the sentence, in terms of information and in terms of pronunciation. When we say that's the most important in terms of pronunciation, we mean that then we can obviously feel that that word or that syllable stands out from other syllables. Okay, we're going to have some more details discussed in Chapter 3. So be patient if you have more questions. All right. Information focus and nucleus. What have we learned? We've learned that the information focus and the nucleus at the same time must be in the most important word in the sense group. The first thing, the most important word. Second, information focus and nucleus signals a pause. It signals the coming or the approach of a pause or the boundaries of intonation units or sense groups. Finally, remember that if it is nucleus and the nucleus has the perception properties, remember that then it is louder, longer, and it shows great change in pitch.